Hi there, very good evening. You, of course, are watching the press preview, a first look at what's going to be on the front pages of tomorrow's papers as they arrive here at Sky News. And time to see what's making the headlines with Fleet Street Fox and Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface. We're also joined by the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Wallis Simons. As you can see, they're joining me now, and they are with us from till midnight tonight. Both of you, welcome to Sky News. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we speak to them in more detail, let's get you up to date what's on the front pages of the newspapers tomorrow. War hero takes aim at Harry over kill claims, reads the front of the Times, as they look at backlash at the Duke of Sussex has faced since he said in his memoir he killed 25 people while serving in Afghanistan. Well, the same story is uncovered by the Daily Mirror tomorrow. Their headline, Harry faces global fury over Taliban kill claims. And Harry kills outrage, reads the Daily Mirror tomorrow. The Prince also covers the front of the Daily Telegraph, but this time in terms of his late grandmother. Its headline reads, Harry's ambushes harmed the Queen's health. Harry also on the front story of the Express tomorrow. And in other news tomorrow, revealed Abramovich's trust transferred before sanctions, reads the front of the Guardian newspaper. Sunak invites union leaders to talks as the headline of the Financial Times tomorrow as it looks at the Prime Minister's ongoing struggle with strike action. And British national security fears after Chinese spyware found in government car in the UK, reads the front of the Weekend. And, of course, a quick reminder for you that by scanning the QR card that you can see on the screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch with us. Well, joined, of course, by Fleet Street Fox and Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Wallis Simons. Welcome to you both. Good to have you on board. Let's start with the Daily Mail, why don't we? Harry faces global fury over those Taliban kill claims. Susie, what do you make of it?
It's just insane, is all I can say. Before I start, I'd like to thank one of our regular Sky News viewers, a guy called Brian Pitt, who served at the nuclear tests in 1956, Operation Grapple. He sent me a memento of those tests, which is on my door behind me at the moment. It's a pennant from Christmas Island, and he very kindly sent it to me to add to my nuclear door. And that's an actual pennant there that came from the Britain's nuclear testing programme. So thank you, Brian, for sending it to me.
Fair
Please
enough.
don't anybody send the stuff. It's not going up on the wall.
Back to Harry.
But as far as the Daily Mail is concerned, this is an astonishing contortion from a newspaper which spent actual years, campaigning to overturn the criminal conviction of a soldier who was accused of murdering one Taliban, Sergeant Alexander Blackman, whose conviction later was reduced to manslaughter with diminished responsibility, but had to serve a 7-year sentence for it. To somehow say in Daily Mail world that killing more Taliban in a way that was legal is somehow worse. It's kind of astonishing. Now, it may well be, and of course it is, there are many people who are quoted, former military commanders, pilots, colleagues of Harry's who have said, this isn't quite what you should be doing. We don't come home and announce our totals. Your average veteran in the street who respected Harry a lot up till now because he served may well feel that's not the kind of thing he would do when he comes home and sits on the sofa with his wife. He's not going to announce how many people he's killed or thinks he's killed. And it's not quite right. But every single member of the military who's written a book has written in detail about the deaths they carried out. That Andy McNabb, the Bravo 20 guys, they have all written about the people they've killed. They may not have announced a big total, but they have gone into some detail about it. So the fact that Harry has somehow said he's killed 25, it's not unusual. And it's not the kind of thing that in any other circumstance the Daily Mail would have any problem with whatsoever.
Well, just for the matters of being balanced, your paper, the Daily Mirror, also calls it an outrage, the fact that Harry has given this number. And it has to be said, I mean, let's come to you as well, Jake. Looking at the Times, and indeed most of the front pages, it seems that most people have a problem with this, don't they? The Times quotes a war hero taking aim at Harry over this kill claim. It does seem to be not the done thing for people of the armed forces to talk about how many people they've killed. What's your view?
That's right. I think Susie's being very unfair to the Daily Mail in her criticism of it. The Mail was not criticising Prince Harry for killing the enemy. That's what he's there for as a soldier, as an airman. They were criticising the fact that he openly bragged about the number, the kill total or the kill tally. That's quite different from soldiers sometimes telling their war stories in their memoirs. It's got a sense of sort of boasting, of jubilation, of, as Colonel Tim Collins put it, notches on a rifle butt. Now, all of us who know soldiers in our daily lives, I think most of the viewers will know soldiers personally, will know that they very, very rarely talk about their war experiences at all, and certainly never, ever talk about the people they've killed, and certainly not the numbers of people they've killed. And there are very, very good reasons for that. Colonel Tim Collins was quoted in the Times today as saying that Harry has not only betrayed his birth family, but he's also now betrayed his military family. Those are strong, strong words from such a senior military figure. And he's the man, you might remember, who gave that very inspiring pre-battle pep talk to troops before the Iraq invasion, where he told them not to be too enthusiastic in killing or they would bring shame upon themselves and their families. And, I've got friends, who are Afghans who've translated I had one friend who translated for the then Prince Charles in Afghanistan, and he's told me that his family have been put at risk in Afghanistan by further reprisal attacks based on a response to Harry's brag that's gone all around the world. Whichever way you cut it, it's wrong. It's not about the Daily Mail. Every single paper has taken the same view. It's totally wrong and against the military code and must be condemned.
Quick comment before we move on, Susie? Very quick comment.
Yeah, I agree to some extent. I think that the announcing of a total, as I said in my piece, is not that common. And I think it's probably unwise of Harry to have done it. But the criticism of him for discussing this kind of stuff, I think, is unbalanced. I think the Mail's attitude is a bit strange.
Okay.
And considering what its reputation has been before. And I wouldn't say it was bragging. If you read the bit of that part of the book that's been reproduced, he's very clear that he's neither boastful nor regretful about it.
Okay. On to the Telegraph now. They take a different angle. Harry's ambush has harmed the Queen's health, they say, according to royal sources. It's those sources again, huh? Sources close to the former monarch say that Prince Harry's repeated ambushing of the royal family had a detrimental effect on the Queen Elizabeth II's health in her final year. What do you make of the line that they're taking on this saga? Susie, you go first.
Well, I take it with a big, deep pinch of salt. And if you read into the story, it appears to come from someone who was perhaps linked to the late Queen, perhaps worked for her, was a friend of her. And there's a very hyperbolic statement in the second column there in which they talk about Harry saying he wants a reconciliation, but then he puts this machete in their backs. Now, that is a very, very strong choice of a turn of phrase. And I would have thought if Harry or Meghan had come out with a phrase claiming that their family has somehow put a machete in their backs about something in this row, the Telegraph would say that was a ridiculous thing to suggest. The Queen was very elderly. She was obviously not in the best of health. This can't have helped, but I'm sure as well she was being well insulated from it. And from the reports that came out of the meetings that were taking place during the family, the conflict and the bad bits, the stressful bits, were very much things that took place between the princes rather than with their grandmother.
And Jake, Harry has said an awful lot, hasn't he, about so-called royal sources close to the royal family. I mean, could this be an example of that again?
Well, one of the ways in which the royals work is that they brief stuff out anonymously a lot via sources. Most of it's accurate and has come from the real sources themselves in some way.
Do you agree with that? Is that the right way to go forward, do you think?
Well, I mean, it's part of the tradition of how the royals are. They try to remain aloof, and certainly in terms of on the record comments, they try to weigh their words very carefully. And the late Queen was a great example of that. She gave that one phrase, "Recollections may vary," which spoke volumes and volumes and didn't need to say anything else because it was such a rare intervention. And so I think that's the way that things work, is the way that we're used to in this country. And it's the tradition from which Harry is very spectacularly departing at the moment. I think that I don't quite agree with Susie on this. I think that the thing to recognise that this is not a row as such. It's very much a one-sided attack coming from Harry on his family. It's pretty unprovoked. Whatever tensions there are inside a family, to bring it out into the public like this via Netflix, via the book and other interviews with Oprah and so forth, is really unprecedented. And I can understand the depth of feeling that's led to this colourful metaphor of a machete in the back, because yes, it's over the top, but it does represent the real sense of hurt that I imagine the royal family is feeling at this very public and unprecedented attack on them by Prince Harry.
Shaking your head, Susie.
I think that's an unprecedented use of the word unprecedented, because Princess Diana and Prince Charles both gave TV interviews and both cooperated with books 30 years ago. And Harry is doing just what he's bred to do. I'm sure there'll be future royal biographies and TV documentaries as well. They do quite often have this thing where they decide they want to cut out the middleman and speak for themselves, kind of thing. They've done that a lot, and I'm sure it'll keep on happening. Harry's obviously matched his parents' total already, but I think he's going to carry on, isn't he?
You can tell it's a big story, because even the FT weekend, the FT, a paper you think would maybe move away from a story like this, is got it on its front page. Says the royal popularity takes a knock from Harry's book. It says that his book, Spare, and of course various documentaries you've seen as well, is really going to impact the popularity of the royal family, which leaves a good point, doesn't it? Susie, let's start with you. We haven't heard from Buckingham Palace. We haven't heard from any senior member of the royal family. Do you think we will? And more importantly, do you think we should? Do you think they should come forward?
Well, listen, Buckingham Palace silence is not sustainable. It wasn't sustainable in 1992 when Diana did this, and it's not sustainable now. They will be right now wargaming what they could say and how it would play. And they'll be doing all kinds of different things and trying to work out which would be the best solution. They're taking their time over it, but that is going to happen, I'm sure. And they're also probably waiting to get their own hands on a copy and read it. As far as Harry and what he wants to do and achieve out of this is concerned, he's got his paycheck, he's caused a fuss, and he's got, thanks to various newspapers, he's got absolute worldwide free publicity. So there are lots of copies of this book are going to be sold worldwide, and the FT is completely right, and they're taking the global view here. In Britain, we have this deferential attitude where we tend to side with whoever's wearing the crown, and because they're the ones that are going to be here long term. They're the ones who matter. And we tend to see anyone who's a secondary prince or an interloper or someone who's married in as they're the threat to the monarchy and the institution. So we tend to say when something like this happens, we're going to have a sympathy with the crown rather than elsewhere. But the rest of the world don't have that attitude. And the FT is rightly pointing out that royal popularity worldwide may take a bit of a knock when people actually get reading this like 600 odd pages. I mean, there's far more stuff in there than we've actually seen. And so many people are going to be buying it now.
I just want to bring Jake in before we have to go to the break. So you do stay where you are, because you are definitely staying with us for the rest of the hour. Jake, I mean, as a journalist, do you think that they should speak? If you were representing or advising the royal family, would you advise that they say something or keep stum?
I think that the best policy really is to keep quiet over this. It must be very, very tempting indeed to respond to this provocation, which I accept what Susie said. There have been previous high-profile royal interviews, but nothing with such a senior royal making such lurid and personal claims. I think that it would be tempting to depart from the policy of not talking openly, not responding openly. I think they've got to hold the line. They've got to uphold the standards that the British subjects expect of them. It's interesting that in terms of polling in Britain since all this has happened, the popularity of Harry and Meghan has plummeted, whereas that for King Charles and others has remained stable or even increased. That's not the same, as the FT has pointed out, overseas. Whereas, overseas, the respect for the royal family has declined. It just goes to show that Harry's actions are actually damaging Britain's standing in the world. It's not just about him and his family in Britain. It's actually about the international respect for our country. So his actions are very, very, very far-reaching indeed.
OK, Jake, Susie, for now, thank you very much. Do stay where you are, because there's plenty more in our press preview, including this story that's on the front of the Financial Times. Back to the FT for you. It reads, Sunak invites union leaders to talks. Those talks are taking place, of course, on Monday. We'll be reading the article in more detail in just a few minutes. Do stay tuned. Hi there, welcome back. You are watching the press preview tonight. With me is Susie Boniface and Jake Wallis Simons. Welcome back to both of you. Let's get cracking on some of the other newspapers that you've picked out for us to have a look at, Jake. Let's start with you. Back to the FT. Sunak invites union leaders to talks. This is, of course, a meeting that he's invited union parties to on Monday. Are you optimistic of a breakthrough? Is the FT optimistic of a breakthrough?
There doesn't seem to be very much chance for breakthrough at the moment. The response from union leaders has been very disparaging towards the Prime Minister's invitation to take charge of these negotiations, such as they are personally. The train drivers are playing a big role in these discussions. The government has previously been insisting that train drivers now operate the doors of the trains, eliminating the need for guards and increasing productivity and efficiency. The unions have responded badly to this, insisting that move is not made because they want to protect their jobs, regardless of the advantages to the service that it may offer. Although I suppose they would contest that. It's obviously the Prime Minister's attempts to try to break the deadlock. These strikes are crippling Britain. We've had an entire week where people haven't been able to get to work. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when you think about the nurses' strikes, which are even more serious, and the ambulance technicians' strikes, and the driving instructors' strikes, the postal workers' strikes, and so forth. It does feel as if the number 10 is beginning to crack a little bit. There are some concessions beginning to emerge, but the union bosses are still remaining intransigent as far as we can see.
And just quickly, Susie, in 30 seconds, the Daily Telegraph warning that teachers across the UK are now potentially going to strike.
Potentially, yeah. And I hope they don't get subjected to the same kind of misreporting that the FT lead there has just been getting, and some of the other papers as well. Now, I love Fleet Street and all the people in it and all the things that we do, and I'll defend it to anybody. But Sunak is not trying to break a deal with the strikes. He's not trying to negotiate these strikes, as we've just been told, and as the papers are reporting here. He is talking about having a meeting with union leaders about a pay deal for next year and how it might work next year. The strikes that are happening now, that are crippling the country now, he is refusing, and his government are refusing to talk about or to come to a deal over. All right? They have refused.
Susie, we have to leave it there. I'll tell you what, we're going to come back on this very issue at the top of the hour. We'll be talking for a whole hour with you. Susie and Jake, though, for now, thank you very much.